Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. I've been staring at the notes for this one for about an hour, just trying to really wrap my head around all the
It's one
implications.
of those topics, isn't it?
It really is. We're looking at a text today that is, on the surface, about economics,
Hmm?
about risk management. But the deeper you go, the more it feels like a psychological horror story about, well, about the modern condition.
Yeah, the source material is chapter 3 of a larger work on risk,
Mm.
but the title of the chapter alone, it's enough to just stop you in your tracks.
How to legally own another person.
Exactly. It sounds like the title of a very, very dark history textbook.
Huh.
Or maybe, I don't know, a manual for a supervillain.
Right. But what's so unsettling about this and what we're going to get into is that it isn't really about history.
Not just history, no. It's about 9300 a.m. tomorrow morning.
It's about your commute. It's about the benefits package you just negotiated. It describes the fundamental structure of the modern workplace in a way that just makes you want to look at your employment contract and then look in the mirror.
And ask some pretty uncomfortable questions.
That is the hook, isn't it? We're going to look at your job, at your professional reputation, your sense of security, and we're going to ask a question that most of us are, I think, too polite or maybe too afraid to ask.
Which is?
Is employment actually a form of domestication? And if it is, what exactly did you trade for that regular paycheck?
It's a huge question. And the source material we're covering basically argues that, yes, the entire concept of employment, what we all consider the default way of living, is actually a massive risk management scheme.
A risk management scheme.
For the employer, yes. It's not just about getting work done. I mean, if it were just about the work, we'd all be freelancers.
We'd all be in the gig economy.
Right. The argument is that employment is about purchasing obedience. It's about buying the option on someone's future behavior. And to understand how we got here from, free agents to people in cubicles, we have to start in a really unexpected place.
Okay, where are we going?
We have to go back to the 5th century.
This was my favorite part of the reading, I have to say. The gyrovagues. Before we get into the modern office, you have to paint the picture for us. Who are these people?
The gyrovagues. Okay, so they were a specific class of monks in early Christianity. But you have to picture the absolute opposite of what you think of when you hear the word monk.
So not guys in robes chanting in a stone abbey.
Not at all. They didn't live in stone abbeys, they didn't make wine or cheese, and critically, they didn't answer to an abbot. They were itinerant.
Itinerant, so they just wandered.
They roamed from town to town, begging for food, staying maybe a night or two in one place, and then just moving on.
So they were basically spiritual freelancers, the original gig economy workers, but, for God.
That's a great way to put it. But you can see how they would have been an absolute nightmare for the established church.
Why? Because they were unpredictable.
Because they were, and this is a key phrase from the source, sustainably insecure.
Sustainably insecure. What does that mean?
It means that because they had no possessions, no walls to repair, no home base, no mortgage, they had absolutely nothing to lose.
And if you have nothing to lose...
You can't be controlled. You can't be leveraged. They were totally free agents operating inside the system, and the system hated it.
That is the key friction point, isn't it? I was reading that the Council of Chalcedon banned them in the 5th century.
They did.
And then the Council of Nicaea had to ban them again 300 years later.
They just wouldn't go away.
So the church, this massive, powerful institution, spent centuries trying to stamp out these wandering beggars. Why was a guy with a bowl such a threat?
Because you cannot govern someone who has zero overhead. I mean, think about it. If I don't need your roof, and I don't care about your money, and I have no reputation to protect because I'm leaving town tomorrow anyway, what leverage do you have over me?
None. Absolutely none.
The source argues that for any institution to function, and it doesn't matter if it's the Catholic Church, the Roman Empire, or General Motors, it requires that its members be deprived of a certain share of their freedom.
And this brings up Saint Benedict, doesn't it? He's the one who finally cracks the code on how to stop the gyrovagues.
Saint Benedict, yeah. He basically wrote the instruction manual for Western monasticism, his famous rules. And if you look at the rules of Saint Benedict through this lens, through the lens of risk management, they read like a master class in domesticating free agents.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, Rule 33 explicitly forbids any private ownership. Monks can't own anything, not even a book or a pen. Everything has to go through the abbot.
So you own nothing. You have nothing to call your own.
Right. And Rule 70 bans monks from hitting other monks, which gives you a little clue about how rowdy the gyrovagues might have been.
A bit of bar brawling vibe, maybe.
Maybe. But the core purpose, the absolute genius of Benedict's system, was to install stability. He forced them to stay in one place. It's called the vow of stability.
And once you're in one place.
With possessions, even communal ones that you can lose, you become
Yeah.
obedient. You have something at stake. You can be controlled.
So the argument is that you just can't have an organization made up of truly free agents. It doesn't work.
It's impossible.
You need people who have skin in the game, but in a negative sense. They need to have something to lose so that they'll follow the rules.
That is the entire crux of it. An organization can't rely on the goodwill of free people. It needs structural leverage. And this little historical detour into monks and monasteries, it sets up the modern parallel just perfectly.
Because we don't call them gyrovagues anymore.
No. Today, we call that dynamic the difference between a contractor and an employee.
Okay, this is where we get to the parable of the airline pilot. This story, for me, really clarified the whole economic side of it. It takes this abstract idea of freedom and puts it into a really, really stressful business scenario.
It's a great thought experiment. Imagine you're a modern, super efficiency-obsessed business owner. You run a small airline, and you've read all the management books, the ones that say labor is a cost to be minimized. You want to be asset light. So you decide, why would I hire pilots? Why pay for their health insurance, their retirement, their downtime?
All that overhead.
All that overhead. I'll just hire them as contractors. I'll pay them strictly for the hours they're in the air.
I mean, it sounds perfect on a spreadsheet. You're lean, you're agile, you aren't carrying any dead weight on the payroll. It's the MBA dream.
Looks brilliant. It's the lean startup model. Until Oktoberfest.
Right. The source sets the scene so vividly. You have a flight scheduled to go to Munich. It's packed with passengers who are wonderfully described as beer-fattened and ready to party.
Great detail.
The plane is on the tarmac. The ground crew is ready. Everything is set. And then your phone rings at 5 p.m. the evening before the flight. It's Bob, your contract pilot.
And Bob says, effectively, hey, I'm not coming in tomorrow.
Now, in a normal employment situation, this is where you'd threaten to fire him. You'd say, Bob, if you don't show up for this flight, you are done.
You'd have that leverage. But Bob is a contractor. He doesn't work for you. He works for the contract.
And the contract has a penalty clause, but
Bob has a better offer. A Saudi sheikh, a man with basically infinite resources, wants to fly a private party to Las Vegas. And he's offered Bob a massive, life-changing sum of money.
And the sheikh is more than happy to cover the little penalty fee in Bob's contract with the airline. It's pocket change to him.
So Bob is just acting rationally. He's a free market agent. He's taken the better deal. He's a gyrovague with a pilot's license.
But you, the airline owner, you are completely destroyed.
Wiped out.
You have no pilot. You have a plane full of incredibly angry people. You can't get the equipment back for the return leg, so that cancels the next flight. Your reputation is torched overnight. You could literally go bankrupt from this one cascade of failures.
And that is the moment of epiphany. That's the moment the owner realizes what an employee is.
Right. It's not just about labor.
No. If you were just paying for labor, for the physical act of flying the plane, the contractor model would work perfectly. But you're not. You're paying for dependability.
You're paying a premium. The benefits, the job security, the monthly salary, even when they aren't flying, all of that is a premium you pay to buy the option on their time.
You are buying the right to ensure they don't take the sheik's offer. That's what a salary is.
That's a powerful reframe. The salary isn't a reward for work you've already done. It's a retainer fee for your freedom. You're paying them to not be free.
It's an insurance premium against the employee acting in their own naked self-interest. The source compares it to housing, which I think is a great analogy.
The country house.
Right. Renting a country house is cheaper and much more efficient. You only pay for it when you actually use it.
Makes sense.
But if you're truly wealthy, you buy the house. Not because it's efficient. It's incredibly inefficient. It sits empty most of the year. You buy it because you want the absolute guarantee that it's available the moment you decide, on a whim, that you want to go there.
So employers buy employees for the same reason, to guarantee availability and to remove the variance, the risk of the open market.
Exactly. You buy them to make them predictable.
So if employment is about buying dependability, let's talk about the psychological mechanism for that. The source uses a word that's pretty charged, domestication.
It doesn't say training or onboarding.
No, it says domestication.
It is a charged word, but if you think about it in the context of behavioral biology and risk management, it fits perfectly. I mean, what is a domesticated animal?
It's an animal that has had its wild, unpredictable instincts suppressed.
In exchange for food and safety, a wolf hunts when it's hungry. A dog waits for the bowl to be filled at 6 p.m. sharp.
The housebroken dog analogy.
It's brutal, but just stick with it for a second. Think about the rituals of the corporate world. You have to arrive at 9:00 a.m., even if you're a night owl who does your best work at midnight.
And you have to leave at 5:00, even if you finished all your work at 3:00.
You dress a certain way. You sit in the meeting, and someone, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a client, said something incredibly, profoundly stupid. And your instinct, your wild gyrovague instinct, is to yell, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," or just walk out.
But you don't.
Of course you don't. You nod, you smile, you say, "That's an interesting perspective, let's circle back on that," and then you send a polite email later.
Per my last email. The passive-aggressive bark of the office dog.
That is a signal of domestication. Every time you do that, you are proving to the pack leader, the firm, that you can suppress your volatility. You are housebroken.
And the source argues that the longer you stay employed, the more of these signals you accumulate.
Your entire life becomes a signal. You get a mortgage, which is a 30-year chain to a monthly payment. You have kids in a private school, which is another chain. You build a life that is entirely dependent on that, quote, mother's milk of the monthly direct deposit.
Mother's milk. The source really does not pull its punches with these metaphors, does it?
No, it doesn't. But the point is about dependency. The employee becomes like a child in the sense that their very survival is linked to the parent organization. This dependency is what the employer is actually purchasing.
They aren't buying your talent, they are buying your fear of losing the teat.
That's the cold, hard logic of it, yes.
It's interesting how this archetype has shifted over time, though. The source talks about the company man of the 1950s versus what we have today. I hadn't really thought about that distinction before, the company man versus the company's person.
It's a vital evolution to understand the modern workplace. It really is. In the 1950s, say you worked at IBM or General Motors, you were a company man.
Right. You wore the white shirt, the dark blue suit. You belonged to IBM.
Your entire identity was stamped by the firm. Your social circle was other IBM people. You shopped at the company store. You expected to retire from IBM with a gold watch and a pension. You were domesticated by a single lifelong master.
But then the 90s happened, Silicon Valley disruption, the dot-com bubble.
And, most importantly, layoffs. IBM fired people. General Motors fired people. The social contract was shattered.
And the company man realized he was in deep, deep trouble.
Because he'd spent 30 years adapting perfectly to IBM's internal culture. He knew exactly how to fill out IBM forms, how to navigate IBM politics, how to laugh at the right IBM jokes. But he had zero idea how to survive in the wild. He was over-specialized to a single artificial environment.
Like a zoo animal that can't be released.
A perfect analogy. So the modern worker learned a lesson from that generation's pain. Don't pledge loyalty to a single firm. Pledge loyalty to the industry.
And that's the company's person.
That is the company's person. Notice the plural. The company's person isn't afraid of losing their current job. Not specifically. They know they'll probably change jobs every 3 to 5 years.
What are they afraid of then?
They're afraid of becoming unemployable. They're terrified of getting a bad reputation in the wider market. Their master isn't a single boss. Their master is the abstract concept of employability.
So they're constantly curating their reputation on LinkedIn, at conferences, and industry groups.
They are performing their domestication for a much larger audience of potential future owners.
The source has this just stinging line about the company's person. It says they are designed to never leave their mark on the course of events.
Because to leave a mark, to actually make history, you usually have to do something risky. You have to be disagreeable. You have to break a rule, challenge the status quo, piss someone off.
Things that make you less employable.
Exactly. The company's person is optimized for smooth, frictionless transitions between employers. They have to be vanilla. They have to be safe. They are, by design, uninteresting to historians because their primary goal is to fit in everywhere. If you're too spiky, too opinionated, you limit your pool of potential buyers.
This all ties back to the economic theory behind it. I mean, we can't talk about the nature of the firm without talking about Ronald Coase.
Of course.
I remember studying him in college, the theory of the firm.
Coase is a giant in economics, a Nobel laureate. And he asked a question that seems almost childishly obvious, but is actually incredibly profound.
Which was, if free markets are so efficient at setting prices for everything,
why do companies exist at all? Why isn't every single worker an independent contractor bidding on every single task every morning?
And his famous answer was transaction costs.
Transaction costs. It's just too expensive and too time-consuming to find a contractor and negotiate a new contract every single time you need someone to file a report or answer the phone.
You'd spend all your time in negotiations and never get any work done.
Correct. So you hire someone. You pay a salary to eliminate thousands of tiny negotiations. It's an efficiency argument. But our source says Coase, as brilliant as he was, missed something huge. He stopped short.
He was looking at the math of the transaction. He was looking at the cost savings. He missed the psychology. He missed the risk.
Exactly. The source argues that companies don't just exist to save on legal fees or negotiation time. They exist to manage the risk of disobedience and human error. And it brings up this fascinating historical parallel with Roman families to explain this point.
The Roman treasurer. This one blew my mind. The fact that in ancient Rome, wealthy families would often use a slave to manage their finances rather than a free person.
It seems completely backwards to our modern mind, doesn't it? Why would you trust your entire fortune to someone you own? Why not hire a professional free accountant with great references?
It makes no sense. But the logic, when you hear it, is so ruthless and rational.
It is. Think it through. If you hire a free man to manage your money and he steals it all, what can you really do to him?
You can sue him. Take him to court.
You can sue him, sure. But maybe he took the money and fled to Bithynia, which was kind of the Cayman Islands of the ancient world. Maybe he's already spent it all. As a free Roman citizen, he has rights. There's a limit to his punishment.
That's a slave.
The slave has infinite downside. In Roman law, the owner could have the slave tortured. They could be crucified.
Yeah.
Their physical body was the collateral for their honesty.
My God.
So perversely, the slave was actually more trustworthy because they had so much more to lose than the free man.
That brings a whole new and much darker meaning to the phrase skin in the game.
Literally, the slave had their physical skin in the game. And the modern employee is the structural equivalent of that slave.
Wow.
Now, obviously, we don't use physical punishment, thank God. But we use the threat of credit destruction, reputation ruin, the loss of health insurance for your family, the inability to pay the mortgage on your house. We create a situation where the employee is terrified of making a catastrophic mistake.
So in a complex supply chain, that fear is actually what the employer is banking on.
It's the essential ingredient. The employer needs to know that the person pushing the button is more afraid of pushing it wrong than the employer is. Their fear is the company's safety net.
Speaking of fear and creating dependency, let's talk about the expat. The source calls this person the best slave.
The best paid slave, yes.
I've known people who have gone through this, friends sent by a big bank or a tech firm to Hong Kong or Dubai or Singapore.
It's a classic strategy for multinational corporations, and it is brutally effective. You take a mid-level employee, someone competent, but maybe not super wealthy back home, and you send them to a high-cost, glamorous, far-flung location.
And you shower them with perks.
You give them a massive housing allowance that pays for a villa with a swimming pool. You give them a driver, a gardener, memberships to the best country clubs. Suddenly, this person who has taken the commuter train an hour each way is living like an aristocrat.
But it's all artificial. They aren't actually rich. The company is rich. They are just borrowing the lifestyle.
Precisely. It's a golden leash. The employee and their family get addicted to this incredibly high standard of living. Their kids are in the prestigious international school that costs a fortune. They love being the big shot in the local expat community.
But deep down, they know how fragile it all is.
They know that if the company decides to call them back to the head office in London or New York or Frankfurt, the magic carpet ride is over. Instantly.
They go from the villa with the pool back to being a commuter on a crowded train, eating a sad sandwich at their desk, being just another face in the corporate crowd.
And that fear makes them hyper-obedient. The source argues that expats are often the most political, the most submissive to the hierarchy, because the gap between their company-sponsored life and their real market value life is so enormous. They will do anything, support any bad decision, backstab any rival, just to keep that dream alive for one more year.
It really is the ultimate form of control. Which brings us back to the central metaphor of this whole deep dive, the difference between being a wolf and a dog.
The fable of the wolf and the dog. It's timeless for a reason. Aesop told it. La Fontaine told it. The story's simple.
A wolf starving in the woods, it's winter, he's freezing, he's fighting for every scrap of food.
And he meets a dog who is sleek, fat, and happy. And the dog basically says, "Man, you look terrible. Why live like this? Come live with my master. He feeds me scraps from the table. I sleep by the fire. I am loved. All you have to do is bark at strangers and be nice to the family.
And the wolf is tempted. I mean, who wouldn't be? He's starving. The deal sounds amazing. Safety, food, warmth.
It's the employment contract right there.
Hmm.
But as they're walking toward the house, the wolf notices something on the dog's neck.
He sees a ring of raw, chafed skin where the fur has been rubbed away.
And he asks, "What's that on your neck?" And the dog says, "Oh, it's nothing. That's just a mark from the collar. You know, they chain me up sometimes so I don't run off."
And the wolf just freezes.
The wolf freezes because he finally understands the price of the meal. He realizes that the food and the warm fire come with a restriction on his movement, on his very nature. And he delivers that famous line, "Of all your meals, I want nothing."
And he runs back into the woods, choosing hunger and freedom.
Right. And usually when we hear this story, we cheer for the wolf. We think, yeah, freedom over comfort. Be the wolf.
But the source adds a really, really important nuance here. It brings up an older Aramaic version of the story that involves a wild ass and a lion.
Which is crucial. In that version, the wild ass brags about his freedom to all the domesticated farm animals, and then a few minutes later gets ambushed and eaten by a lion.
So freedom isn't free.
Freedom is never free. Being the wolf sucks a lot of the time. You are hungry, you are cold, you have no veterinarian to fix your leg if you break it, you have no pension plan, you have real existential risk.
So it's not a moral judgment saying employees are bad, entrepreneurs are good. It's an accounting of the trade-off.
Exactly. It's about being honest about the contract you've signed, either with an employer or with yourself. But the biggest warning the source gives is this: do not fake it. Don't be a dog wearing a wolf costume.
And this is where we get into the Harris's sparrow study, which is just fascinating.
It's a classic study in behavioral biology. In this specific species of bird, Harris's sparrows, the darker your feathers, the more dominant you are. The dark-feathered birds are the wolves, the alphas of the group.
Okay.
So scientists had this idea. They took some of the lighter-feathered, more submissive birds, the dogs, and they just painted their feathers dark to see if they would suddenly become leaders. They wanted to see if the costume of dominance was enough.
Fake it till you make it.
It did not work. In fact, it backfired catastrophically. The other birds saw the dark feathers, the signal of the wolf, and they immediately challenged them. "Oh, you're a tough guy now. Let's fight."
Oh, no.
But because these painted birds didn't have the actual strength or the aggression or the testosterone to back up the signal, they were destroyed. They were attacked far more viciously than if they had just stayed in their lane as light-feathered birds.
That is a serious, serious warning for the workplace. Don't go around acting like you have FU money if you have a huge mortgage and zero savings.
If you signal independence, if you act arrogant, or you're openly insubordinate, or you just act free, but you actually depend on that paycheck to survive, the system will call your bluff. The real wolves, or the system itself, will test you, and if you crumble, you're out. Your signal has to align with your reality.
So the question is, are there any actual wolves inside the modern company? Or is the corporation just a kennel full of well-fed dogs?
There are wolves, but they are very, very rare. The source identifies two specific groups who often get a pass on full domestication, who are allowed to be a little bit wild.
And they are.
Salespeople and traders.
Okay, why them? What makes them so special?
Because their value to the term is objective and, crucially, portable. Think about a top-tier enterprise salesperson. They don't just work for the firm. They own the relationship with the client.
Right. The client is loyal to them, not the company.
So if that salesperson leaves, the client and all that revenue often leaves with them. That gives them immense leverage. They aren't just a replaceable cog in the machine. They hold the keys to the revenue stream.
Okay, that makes sense. And traders.
Traders are even more extreme. They are judged by one and only one metric: P&L, profit and loss. Did you make money or did you lose money? That's it.
Nothing else matter.
Nothing. The source tells a story about working in an investment bank where the traders were the only ones who were allowed to be truly unruly. They could curse at the accountants, they could dress like slobs, they could completely ignore HR protocols, as long as they made money.
Strategic foul language. I loved that term from the reading.
It's a pure status signal. In a world of polite, cautious, sanitized corporate speak, where everyone is terrified of offending anyone, dropping an F-bomb in a meeting is a massive power move.
It's a way of saying, I am so valuable that I don't need to follow your silly rules.
It's the equivalent of the Russian oligarch wearing blue jeans to a black tie gala.
Ah,
It signals that you are above the code that binds the normal people.
But there's a catch for the trader, too, isn't there? They are totally free? Not really.
No, absolutely not. The source is very clear on this. You are only as free as your last trade. The moment the profits stop, the moment your numbers go red, that freedom evaporates instantly. The accountant you cursed at yesterday will be the one processing your termination paperwork today. So it's a very fragile, conditional freedom. It's based entirely on high performance.
This whole concept of fragility brings us to what I think is the most counterintuitive part of the entire text. We tend to think that the higher up you go in the world, CEOs, generals, presidents, the more powerful and therefore the more free you become.
And we think power equals freedom. It's a natural assumption.
And the source says the exact opposite is true. It asks this really provocative question: who is freer, a long-haul truck driver or the director of the CIA?
And intuitively, you'd say the CIA director, of course. He has immense power. He has state secrets. He commands thousands of agents. He can change world events.
He has power over others, yes, but the source argues he has almost no power over himself. Look at the case of David Petraeus.
A perfect example. A four-star general, a celebrated war hero, director of the CIA. He was at the absolute pinnacle of the American hierarchy.
And then what happened?
He had an extramarital affair, and his career was annihilated. Instantly. He had to resign in total disgrace. Why? Because he was vulnerable to scandal, to public opinion, to the press, to political rivals.
Meanwhile, if a truck driver has an affair,
Who cares? Seriously. As long as the delivery gets to its destination on time, his employer doesn't care. The public certainly doesn't care. His reputation is local, not global. The truck driver has so much less downside risk from his personal life than the general does.
so what matters isn't what you have, but what you are afraid of losing.
That is the core principle. The higher you climb the ladder, the more you have to lose. Your reputation becomes this fragile, priceless vase that you have to protect at all costs.
The source mentions Nobel Prize winners who are terrified of getting into a public argument with a traitor.
Because they are so afraid of looking foolish and losing a tiny bit of their immense status, they become slaves to their own reputation. They stop taking intellectual risks because they are defending a legacy instead of building one.
This leads to a really pointed comparison in the text, and we need to be clear here. This is the source's argument, not ours, between Western bureaucrats and autocrats. It specifically uses Putin as an example, which is obviously a very charged topic.
Right. And we're just analyzing the structural argument the source is making. It contrasts the heads of state in Western democracies with someone like, say, Vladimir Putin.
Yep.
It argues that a Western leader, a president or a prime minister, is essentially a high-level bureaucrat. They don't own the country. They are just renting the top job for 4 or 8 years.
And they are accountable to a lot of people.
They are slaves to approval ratings, to the media cycle, to congressional committees, to powerful donors. They are completely domesticated by the overwhelming need to be reelected or to secure a favorable historical legacy.
Whereas the autocrat, in this framework,
The autocrat acts like they have FU money. They act like the owner of the house, not a temporary tenant. The source argues this makes them dangerous, obviously, but also structurally distinct from the bureaucrat. In this analogy, the autocrat is a predator. The bureaucrat is a domesticated animal.
and the really chilling insight the source offers is about what happens when these two types of leaders meet on the world stage.
Domesticated animals don't stand a chance against wild predators. And why is that? Because the predator just pulls the trigger. The domesticated animal forms a subcommittee to discuss the optical implications of pulling the trigger.
The predator acts, the bureaucrat processes.
That's the argument. And that paralysis, this bureaucrat's dilemma, is really the final section of our dive today. Why is it so incredibly hard for large organizations or governments to make hard, necessary decisions? Why do they seem to get stuck in these obviously bad patterns?
And it all comes back to the agency problem, back to risk.
It comes back to the fact that an employee's primary goal, and a bureaucrat is just a very high-level employee, is not necessarily to solve the problem. Their primary unspoken goal is to keep the job.
The text uses the Vietnam War as the classic example of this in action.
It's a perfect, tragic case study. By a certain point in the mid-1960s, many people inside the Pentagon and the White House administration knew the war was unwinnable. The data was there. The reports were on their desk.
So why didn't they stop it?
Because to stop the war would require admitting a massive, catastrophic mistake. It would require the institution and the individuals within it to take a huge reputational hit. It requires a wolf move taking immense pain and blame now for a better long-term future.
But the dog move is just to keep barking. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly. It was safer for the individual careers of the generals and the secretaries of defense to let the war drag on, killing thousands and thousands more people, than to be the specific guy who stood up and said, "We failed, this was a mistake."
The agent's survival instinct, which is protecting their own career, was completely misaligned with the principal's interest, which was the good of the nation.
A total misalignment of skin in the game.
There's also the more recent example in the text about Saudi Arabia and the rise of extremism in the 90s and 2000s.
Right. The source makes the argument that for decades, Western diplomats and intelligence agencies focused on the symptoms of terrorism invading countries like Iraq, hunting down individual terrorists rather than the root cause.
And the source identifies that root cause
As the massive global funding of radical Wahhabi schools and extremist education, with a lot of that funding coming from donors inside Saudi Arabia.
So if they knew that was the source, why didn't they just go and stop it?
Because confronting a wealthy, powerful ally like Saudi Arabia is absolute career suicide for a diplomat or a politician. It's messy. It causes oil prices to spike. It upsets the entire geopolitical status quo. It's far too risky for any one individual's career.
It's much safer to write another report, form another task force.
Or invade a weak, hostile nation that everyone already hates than to have a difficult, honest conversation with a friendly one. The bureaucrat's objective is to not make waves that could drown them personally, even if the whole ship is slowly sinking.
So we end up with these terrible outcomes, wars that drag on forever, extremism that spreads unchecked, because the people in charge don't have the personal skin in the game to make the hard, correct call.
They're protecting their seat, not the ultimate outcome.
That is the ultimate and pretty depressing takeaway, isn't it? People who don't personally bear the negative consequences of their decisions simply cannot be trusted with complex critical systems. They will always optimize for their own safety and reputation, often at the expense of the system itself.
It's a structural problem, not a moral one. It's just how incentives work.
So where does this leave us? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from begging monks in the 5th century to Roman slaves, from airline pilots to CIA directors.
It leaves us with a mirror. At the end of the day, you have to turn this analysis back on your own life. You have to look in the mirror.
And be honest.
And be honest. Employment is a trade. It's a perfectly valid trade. There is no shame in it whatsoever. You give up a measure of liberty for a measure of safety and predictability. You wear the collar to get the meal. In a rational, time-tested survival strategy.
But don't delude yourself. That's the key point.
That's the entire point. Don't sit in your cubicle, in your comfortable office, and think that you are a wolf just because you listen to rebellious music on your commute. You aren't. You are part of the machinery. And that's okay.
And if you decide you do want to be a wolf, if you want to be an entrepreneur, a true freelancer, an artist, modern-day gyrovague,
then you have to understand that the price is hunger. The price is risk. The price is the real possibility of being eaten by the lion. And the price is having no one to blame but yourself when things go wrong.
The source, it ends with this little teaser. It mentions the Achilles heel of the free.
Which is fascinating. It suggests that even the wolves, even the truly free, have a critical weakness. That being free makes you robust in some ways, but incredibly fragile in others. But I think that is a story for another deep dive.
I agree. So here's the final thought we want to leave you with. The next time you're at work and you're writing that email that starts with, "per my last email," or the next time you swallow your anger in a meeting and just smile and nod at a boss you can't stand, feel the collar.
Acknowledge it's there.
Don't hate it, but just know that it's there. And ask yourself, is the food still worth it?
Stay safe or stay free. It's always your choice.
Thanks for taking the deep dive.